Welcome to Pod Applaud, the Monday and Friday podcast that aims to enable your podcast habit. I'm your host, Seb, and today I've brought Belinda along to help investigate the podcast, The Black Tapes. So, Belinda, what is The Black Tapes all about?
The Black Tapes is a fictional podcast communicated in a non-fiction styled story form. Alex Regan, an investigative journalist working for radio program Pacific Northwest Stories, begins looking into the cases of one Dr. Richard Strand, a paranormal investigator and debunker. The story was intended to go another way, but when she comes across the Black Tapes, a collection of tapes depicting Dr. Strand's unsolved cases, interest turns to those instead, and the whole podcast ends up becoming about them. Most of the cases are of classic horror story tropes, such as ghosts in the background of photographs and exorcisms, which I love hearing about, real or not. As Alex covers more of these tapes, she begins suspecting that they all may be connected in a sinister way. Ooh.
Yeah, that sums up the show really well. Listeners can expect 3 seasons worth of material, 30 episodes total, that hover around the 30 to 40 minute length, and a few bonus recordings as well. I'm going to make the tentative statement that the show is ready to be binged. There were announcements last year that the show will be coming back for another season and that it will be reimagined as a TV series. At this point, there's been no updates at all, so I'd consider the 3rd season the official end for now. So Belinda, tell us exactly what you adored so much about the Black Tapes, and maybe anything you would improve on or change.
The first podcast I ever listened to that drew me into the world of podcasts was Serial. I kept noticing that one of the music jingles was eerily similar to Serial's theme. Then I noticed that the format of the Black Tapes is also very similar to Serial. The protagonist is an investigative journalist that records audio of interviews and conversations with people of interest, phone calls, and sound files sent to her. It is interspersed with commentary where she narrates what is going on with her investigation. This piecing together of footage, mystery format really lured me in. However, what really got me hooked was how it hits all my buttons, as it entails all things supernatural and horror. Demons, abandoned sanatoriums, satanic cults, paranormal activity-style recordings, murders and suicides, exorcisms, and etc. Any one of these elements in the genre would have attracted me, but the Black Tapes went even bigger, combining all of them in a motherlode of paranormal goodness. The only criticism I have is, despite the premise of the whole show being unrealistic, it is fiction after all. I found it pretty unrealistic that one of the characters Alex Regan was interrogating would constantly lie or omit information that we found out later, in a really obvious way. I think the writers could have presented these plot points in a cleaner manner. Nonetheless, I suspended my belief and couldn't get enough of the show. I was a bit put out when I discovered that Season 3 ended on a cliffhanger, but I'm eagerly awaiting Season 4.
I know you mentioned that you adore all the otherworldly elements of the Black Tapes. In the same vein, I appreciate all the elements taken from humanity's wild history that made it into the show. The Necronomicon, the Codex Gigas, the connection between geometry and religion, the Mesopotamian gods. Every turn inside the world of the Black Tapes, you feel like you are spinning away from the world as we know it. Yet, if you dig in and do some research, you'll find most everything in the show has some root in our reality. In fact, if you check the show's website, you'll find they have over 50 names listed as people who contributed to the research for the show. It just goes to show the power of collaborative efforts. I also really like the Dr. Strand character, especially his voice. And from a cursory search on the internet, I can tell I'm not alone. Turns out a lot of people on the web are crushing on that creepy, emotionally distant doctor. The voice acting in this show is top-notch. I will say there was one character whose lines always seemed a little understated or too lighthearted for some of the situations at hand. Well, Belinda, how about you take it away with your score for the Black Tapes and some closing thoughts?
Here on Pod Applaud, we rate shows on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is silence, 2 is a slow clap, 3 is applause, 4 is a round of applause, and 5, of course, is a standing ovation. I would give the Black Tapes a 5 out of 5. The mystery combined with supernatural elements made it a podcast that was right up my alley. I enjoyed the voice acting, appreciate all the research, and spooky audio clips giving me the chills.
Yeah, you really did love this show, didn't you? Personally, I would give the show a 4 out of 5, a round of applause. Without going into too much spoilers, one of the subplots was a little bit tropey, and I saw it coming from early on in the show. Also, I think some of the musical elements have been pulled from public domain or royalty-free resources. So whenever the musical motif for Creepy Kids played, it took me out of the show and made me think about Ninth Story's studio podcast, The Lift. The music that indicated the dramatic scenes did a good job at conveying melodrama, but was also pretty cheesy. Overall, I really liked my time with the Black Tapes. If more is released via podcast or TV, I will definitely check it out. Belinda gave the Black Tapes a 5 out of 5, and I gave it a 4 out of 5, a round of applause. Great show for both occult horror buffs and lovers of weird history. That also weaves in fantastic and memorable characters.
That's been the show for today. If you found it valuable, please be sure to subscribe for more podcast reviews. If you wish to reach out or follow the show, you can find us on Twitter at Podapplaud or visit podapplaud.com, where you can find further contact information and transcripts for each episode. Thank you for listening, and please tune in again.